Now, with what you've learned on passing variables, I'm going to take you through this JavaScript, and I'm going to show you some useful programs. Now, I use this in my web development class, so a lot of this is just introduction to what JavaScript is. You already know that JavaScript is the thing that does the work on the web page. Now, I'm going to show you how to fool spam spiders. There's programs that comb the web. They can do millions of pages every day, and they basically look at everybody's web pages and they look for the @ sign. Once they find the @ sign, they pull that text out and they build up a database to send spam to. So here's our basic HTML file. And you might want to go in and take the start file that we just used from the previous tutorial and then save it, and you can call it what is JavaScript. Again, notice the naming conventions. Always start lowercase, no spaces, use camel case so it's more readable, and then do .html. Notice this is not going to do an external style sheet. Now, if you want to use an external style sheet, then just change the file name on your external style sheet. So get a new web page all set up. And also notice I did an H1. So something shows up on the page. Now, I haven't introduced this so far, but this is a really useful technique, and that's using highlighted comments. You could start your JavaScript comment and then do a series of asterisks or equal signs. Oftentimes, I do like equal space space equal space space all the way across. And then I write out what my function is doing. I do the function name and what it's supposed to do. This allows you to scroll through your code really quickly and identify each individual function. Now, up to now, you've only been writing 1 or 2 functions, but when you have a page of 10, 20, 30 functions, this gets to be really, really useful. Also, as I got programming more and more, I found out it was really useful to put my functions in alphabetical order. So I alphabetize my functions, and that allows me to track them on the page really quickly. Once you have one of these blocks set up, it's a real easy thing to copy and paste it on all your other functions. So here's our function. We're going to call it display date stamp. So that's our signature line. And then we're going to write what we want to do. So I have a lot of comments here, but basically we're going to do a document write. And then we're going to look back at the document, or the DOM, and we're going to use the last modified parameter. Now, you know this is a parameter because it doesn't have parentheses after it. If it had parentheses, it would be what? What is this right here with parentheses? It's a function, all right? So this doesn't have parentheses. This means it's just a parameter or a variable that describes document, and document being the web page. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, write out to the web page the last modified date of the web page. So that's going to be our one-line function, and we have lots of comments there. Now that you have the function, then you go into your, or this is what it looks like without all the commenting. And then you want to go into the body part of your page. and call a function. So there's your function, and here's where you call it. So in your body section underneath your H1, we're going to say last updated. That's our straight HTML. Then we're going to put on the JavaScript hat and call out our function, display date stamp. And you all are probably really comfortable now that this has to match exactly like this. So the name of your function, when you call it, has to match exactly. And you don't want to use the keyword function down here because that'll start a whole new function. So just call the name of the function with a semicolon. As the browser loads, it's going to go into the head and it's going to say, oh, a function. It's going to set this in temporary memory. And then it's going to do the rest of the page. And when it comes to this down here on line 24, it's going to say, oh, go up to the temporary memory and run that code, which is going to output the date for the document. When you run your page, it should look something like this. Here's your H1. Here's your last updated that was in the HTML. And then this is the result of your JavaScript. Now, as a programmer, one of the things you want to do is you want to build up an expert checklist in your head. So here's the expert checklist. If your date stamp isn't showing up, the first thing you want to say is everything spelled correctly. This is like the most common of all errors. Does the function name that is being called match the actual function name in the head section? Upper lowercase matter, and so does spelling. Many times I'll take the name in the head, I'll copy it, and then I'll paste it where I call it. Does the line inside the function end with a semicolon? Make sure you have your semicolons in the right place. Does your function, is it framed with curly braces? So check and make sure you have a start curly brace, and then look down the page and find your stop curly brace. Often the stop curly brace gets deleted in mistake. And you probably noticed today that at the end of each of my stop curly braces, I put a comment saying this is the end of such and such a function. That's a nice way to keep that closing curly brace from getting lost and deleted. Rule number 4 is, do you have the script spelled correctly in the head and in the body? I've seen people put in here test, T-E-S-T, probably because they hear me say it, so they type in test, but it's text. And did you spell JavaScript correctly? Now, inside here, upper lowercase does not matter. But I always do it all lowercase, and then I never have to worry about it. Did you remember to do a stop script? So look in your head, make sure you have a start script and a stop script. Same thing in the body. Did you put that stop script in there? And this is the old bugaboo. Are you viewing the same file you are editing? So what do you do to check that really quick? Change something in your code like XYZ and an H1, something simple. Save it, go to your browser, and if it doesn't show up, you know you're looking at something different than you're editing. Now, this sounds really foolish, but it happens often, especially when you change file names and do file save as and things like that. So if things aren't happening like you expect them to, make sure that you're editing and viewing the same code. This checklist works with all your JavaScript code, not just this code. So this is like your expert checklist. Everybody get the date timestamp working? This is a really nice thing to put down the bottom of every page, and it automatically, when you make any changes on a web page, it automatically updates you from your date timestamp. It's a really nice way to keep people up to date of when you last made changes on the pages. Clients really, really like that. Now, let's get to those spam spiders. These spam spiders, these programs are designed to look for the @ symbol as well as mail to, MAILTO : As they find them, they build up these huge databases and that's how you get on spam. So if you build web pages, don't put your client's email directly on the web page. This is how you work around it. Make this a little smaller. Now this is how we typically, this got confusing. These hyperlinks in here, these don't belong in here. My program that made this tutorial threw those in, so these have to be removed. Interesting. Okay. So I'm going to go in and do a quick hyperlink so you can see it. Here's my web page. I'm going to go to a web page. And here's going to be a hyperlink. So first I do a tag, and then I'm going to go href. And then I'll say href equals, and I'll say joe.smith@gmail.com. And in order to make that link into a hyperlink for email, I'm going to say mail to. So if I was normally going to go out to a web page, I'd say http://. But by saying mail to, that tells the browser to open up the mail program that's located on this browser. So that's the beginning of my tag. And then inside of it, I'm going to say send an email to Joe Smith @gmail.com. And that's what's going to display on my page in blue with underlines. And then I close my A tag. So this goes out on the web, and the spam spiders come in here and they find the @ sign and they say, oh, look for the quotation mark. So it backs up, finds a quotation mark, and says, well, there's my email address, and it puts it in their database and moves on to the next one over and over and over again. So what we're going to do is we're going to use JavaScript, and we're going to print out this piece and this piece. Well, really, we're going to print out all of this separately. So we're going to have JavaScript code in here, which the spam spiders don't know to look for. They can't be programmed to look for my JavaScript code. And then my JavaScript is going to print this out, and the spam spider won't see it. Because this is all that the spam spiders look at, is the actual text out on the web. So this is what, when we show the page, this is what the hyperlink will look like. Email John Smith, I had typed it out @Gmail. And if you mouse over a hyperlink, you can look down in your status bar and you can see where that's going. Let's see if I get that a little bigger. So when I just put my mouse over this hyperlink, then you'll see that this is the actual hyperlink. So it's going to mail to joesmith@gmail.com. That's the code we have to protect from. Now, this is how professionals program. Right here, we said the name of the function. This is all a comment, all this in green. and we say exactly what's happening. Then I give sample saying this is what the HTML should look like, and then I call out what each part is. So I have part 1 and part 2. And this right here, this Joe Smith before the @ sign, that's going to be part 1, and the domain name is going to be part 2. So just to let you know, this is a really good programmer. You can tell by when they do comment blocks like this. And when you look out at professional code out on the web, not just hobby code, but things like people that wrote Java, you'll see these blocks of explanation throughout all their code. So here's our function. We're going to display email, and we're going to pass in 2 parts. And they're both going to be strings. Now, I broke this up into different pieces, and I commented it really clearly so you can see that I'm doing a document write, and I'm setting up my hyperlink up to my mail to. Then I'm taking whatever was passed in part 1, which in our example was Joe Smith, and I'm going to print out Joe Smith. Then I'm going to print out an @ sign, and then I'm going to print out whatever comes into part 2, which is a domain name. And then that's the end of my hyperlink, that first part of the hyperlink. Then I'm going to come in, I'm going to say Joe Smith at domain, so I reuse those 2 variables, and that's what's going to show up on the screen. So if I wanted to say document write, send an email to, I would put that as a string in here and then concatenate on part 1 at and part 2. And then I close my hyperlink. So basically all of these individual lines of code created this right here, which is the hyperlink that I just showed you in my code. Now, I did this for clarification, but when you get to really programming, you would do it probably do it in 2 lines. So you can see how I put this all together using concatenation. So I did my A tag here, and then I did my what's going to print on the page, and then here's my stop A. So do you see how I could condense all that down into 2 lines? And then here it is for those who love to cut and paste. So here's the same thing without all the commenting, just basic commenting. And I think here it is all in 1 line. See how we use the concatenation? Tying in our strings together. Yes?
So in reality, you put like part 1 to be the first part of your address, and then part 2 to be the second part, up in the that part.
Yep.
And it would actually split
Yep.
them.
So and now I'll go to where you can see, here's where we use it. So here we say display email. Now notice we're in our script tags now, and we'll call our function display email, and what do we send it? We send it Joe Smith. In my example, it would be Joe.Smith from what I typed in my editor. So this would be part 1, and this would be part 2. So here's part 1 as a string, and then here I hard-coded in gmail.com. There's no @ sign and there's no mail to, so the spam spiders go right past this text. They say, nope, there's no email in here. So we take those 2 strings, we send it up to our function, and then our function takes this as part 1 and this is part 2. And it prints it out like this. Keep in mind now, this is not what the spam spiders see. The spam spiders only can look at the text files out there on the browser. So this is what the spam spiders can look at when they parse through it. This is what the user sees, and they see a bona fide email address. They say, oh, that's what I want, and they click on it. So this way you can protect your clients from getting spammed to death, as well as yourself, and you still have communication for their users. But what if the user has their JavaScript turned off? And you can turn your JavaScript off if you have the Web Developer Toolbar that Chris Pederick wrote, and it's installed on these computers. So you can go in, and the toolbar is right along here. You probably didn't even notice it until now. But you can go into disable JavaScript, and you disable all JavaScript. Well, once you do that, your spam spider thing isn't going to work anymore. All the emails are going to disappear. And so will your date timestamp. So you can see all you have is last updated, and you have missing information. And for more information, contact Joe Smith via email, and alas, no email address. So how are we going to handle that? Well, there's a great thing called NoScript that you should put on all your pages that use JavaScript. So here we say NoScript, and if they have script turned off, then this paragraph is going to display. And it's going to say, note, email addresses are being protected from spam spiders using JavaScript. Please turn your JavaScript on in order to see the email addresses. You might even give instructions on how to do that. Only most people that turn their JavaScript off know how to turn it back on. So now when you run this page, people will see this information. And they'll say, oh, this is of value to me. I want to see that email. And they'll turn JavaScript on, and then they'll see the information. So use script, no script. Here's your no script and your stop no script on every single page that uses JavaScript. And you all know about CData already, but because we're doing output, our validator checking the HTML gave us errors. So we put the CData statement around to tell a validator to stay out of our code. So it doesn't try to validate this code as if it's XHTML. There's a complete source code if you need to refer to it. So you've learned how to use the script element, which you already knew. We created a function. We called the function. We passed parameters. You see how often we use passing parameters. And I showed you once more about the NoScript element. You also have a great date timestamp for your web pages, as well as a spam defeater, the spam defeater.